If you're from anywhere in the Baltimore region or the Mid-Atlantic area, you know that April and early May are the months where the temperature on any given day can rise as much as 30, 32 degrees from sunrise to mid-afternoon. So to steal a part of a Yogi Berra say, and it gets hot early out here, Thursday night, possibly around 8:30, 9 o'clock, 9:30 p.m., the temperature of Ravens fans and the Ravens franchise could spike exponentially, depending on what happens from pick 2 to pick 22. We're going to look at what I think are the two most likely scenarios for the Ravens first round in this video, neither of which should inflame Ravens fans. And then I'm going to propose one possibility that should, and that probably will. Look, let's assume for the purpose of this video that the Panthers are going to take Bryce Young with the first pick. The Houston Texans and what they do or what they do not do at pick number 2. In my opinion, they control the draft. I'll link a video up here in the top right corner about the Houston Texans draft and where I think they should go. Even before they make their pick, the decision they make to draft at 2 or not, I think the Texans' choices Thursday night will have a ripple effect from pick 3 to pick 32, which is currently held by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's get right to it here and say the Texans have no intention of drafting C.J. Stroud at pick 2. Let's say those reports are correct. And they could make a run at Lamar Jackson following the draft if they don't take a quarterback at number 2, presumably. And they don't end up trading back up to 6 or 9 or somewhere else to take another quarterback, be it Will Levis, Hendon Hooker, or Anthony Richardson. When the Ravens pick at 22, if the Texans have not picked a quarterback at that point, that's clearly a factor. Same thing goes for the Indianapolis Colts. And if Hendon Hooker and the other quarterbacks in the second tier are still there at the end of Thursday night's first round, the Texans have the first pick in the second round. And that's why I made that video saying the Texans control the draft, because they really influence so many other teams. And that's why I called it a ripple effect. The Ravens will not know when they're on the clock at pick 22 what the Texans are doing if they have not selected a quarterback to that point. So with that being said, that's my attempt to explain how much impact the Texans' choices have just on the Ravens organization, the Ravens fans. Certainly have that effect on multiple other teams as well. We're going to focus just on the first round, and we're going to talk about the first possibility for the Ravens, which is in one way might be even more frustrating than some of the other possible outcomes. I mean, certainly with the possibility of Lamar Jackson being traded or the fear of that, that's frustrating. That's foreboding. But this first possibility involves the Ravens trading back. And the decision whether or not to trade back, I mean, they've done that I think 9 times in the last 16 years, something like that. Maybe my numbers are wrong there. It would basically involve leaving 1 or 2 really good prospects on the board in favor of trying to trade back to teams like Dallas, the Jets, who just acquired Aaron Rodgers officially finally, the Arizona Cardinals, who the Ravens always seem to be linked to, the New Orleans Saints, who I think have picked 29. The draft's going to be exciting and surprising, particularly Thursday night. Where will Jalen Carter get picked? Who do the Texans want at number 2? Who do they not want? What are the Colts willing to do to get the quarterback that they need? Or do they even plan on taking a quarterback? Again, are the Colts a team that could make a run at Lamar Jackson after the draft? It's possible that the Ravens fans end up with, like someone who has no date to the prom, whereby we trade back with, let's say we trade back with the Arizona Cardinals. The Ravens will not make a selection on Thursday night. If we trade back with the Cowboys or the Giants or the Saints, then the Ravens will make a pick later on, but the return on that trade scenario would probably be less because the Ravens would only be moving back 4 or 5 or I think 7 places. It's extremely possible that guys like Deonte Banks, Cam Smith, Emmanuel Forbes, or players like Zay Flowers, who should go way sooner than 22 in my opinion, they'll be on the board and the Ravens trade back to 29 or even 30. The Eagles are at 30 right now, I believe, and they like to deal. Everybody knows that. It's entirely possible that we as Ravens fans sit there worrying for 21 picks, get to pick 22, and the Ravens trade back. The Cardinals present a very real trade partner with picks 34 and 66, I believe. I believe that should say pick 96, not pick 69. Personally, it might be good business for the Ravens to trade back, especially if the Texans or the Colts have not selected a quarterback by the time the Ravens are on the clock. I think that could be one of the reasons why the Texans have put it out there, Texans fans and media believe that pick number 33 is untouchable for them. It kind of holds that over the Ravens' heads in some cases, in some ways, for picking a guy like Hendon Hooker if he's not there, gone already. In my opinion, when the Ravens are on the clock, they might have to trade back if the salary structure works for the Texans or the Colts, or maybe even a team like the Raiders, who of course have signed Jimmy Garoppolo. So you would presume at this point they're not going to draft a quarterback, but there are some mock drafts out there that have them taking Will Levis or Levis, however you pronounce it. It's a very real possibility that the Ravens trade back, and that would ruin a lot of our fun. Mine, first and foremost. On Thursday night, I'm looking forward to the Ravens making a selection that adds to the roster, starting caliber player, but it's entirely possible they trade back into the second and third round to supplement the roster and improve 2 or 3 positions. Guys like Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison look really intriguing to me at pick 22. I find it tough to advocate for passing on those guys, even though my analytical brain recognizes that the why of the Ravens trade back being a strong possibility. All right, so having said that, let's move to the second very likely scenario or possibility. I'm not asking people which one they prefer. I'm offering to you that these are the 3 constructs, foundations that I see as the most likely to occur. The second one has the Ravens eschewing trading back, and they would then have an equally tough decision to make. What if Deonte Banks and Zay Flowers are out there at the same time? Who do you pick? Or Joey Porter Jr. and Zay Flowers, or Joey Porter Jr. and Jordan Addison. If those guys are there at 22, deciding to stick and pick almost makes the decision in some ways even more difficult, because now you've got to choose what position do I want to reinforce, and which player. Look, all of those guys, Quentin Johnston included, Addison, Manuel Forbes, Banks, Zay Flowers, Joey Porter Jr., all of them will have an impact. Personally, I really like Zay Flowers, and I think he could add an element to this to any offense for that matter. I do not think he'll be there at 22, but for the purposes of this video, let's say that he is. I do have concerns about the number of offensive plays the Ravens will run each game, and just the sheer number of touches that guys like J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews, OBJ, and oh, by the way, Lamar Jackson would need. And if you draft a guy like Zay Flowers at 22, he needs touches as well. The one thing for Zay Flowers, in my opinion, I do not think he needs to be a high-touch guy in order to have an impact. To me, he's the type of guy who could touch the ball 5 times in a game and every now and then score 2 touchdowns. He just has that big playability, at least in my eyes. Now, look, if this were college, drafting Zay Flowers would not impact our cornerback depth, okay? There's a such thing in college as called over-recruiting. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term or ever heard it before. It basically means you can over-recruit 5, 6, 7 wide receivers that are all at elite level. Ohio State would be one. And then you might have a guy transfer out, or you might have a guy redshirt a year, or not contribute as much, like Marvin Harrison Jr. in 2021 when Ohio State had Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, JSN. The Ravens and any professional football team do not have that luxury. You can't over-recruit. Am I saying I don't want the Ravens to take Zay Flowers? No, I do. I'm saying the decision is going to be damn hard to pass on him, and equally, maybe a little less more difficult if you choose to select him. I think a high-level cornerback who can contribute right now might help the Ravens a little more just because of the positional need. They've on some levels, they've addressed wide receiver already. So this stick and pick philosophy or scenario or possibility looks pretty appealing, regardless of who you get. Deonte Banks, Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston. As long as you get an impact player, the guy who you think as a front office is going to have the largest impact across multiple techniques and concepts. The risk, I guess, is in adequately addressing one position. Let's say you pick Zay Flowers at wide receiver. You have not strengthened the other, corner. I do think the Ravens are going to go after a veteran corner. It seems as if Rock Ya-Sin is a guy who maybe has an under-the-table agreement with the Ravens. Who knows? Look, this is the draft in a nutshell. It's why it's more fun than college football recruiting, which is hella fun, in and of itself. You can't over-recruit. You only get one pick, at each selection, and it does impact your other positions, your other positional needs. What position or player do you think the Ravens absolutely can't pass up at 22? For me, it's Zay Flowers and Joey Porter. Well, what if they're both there? Deonte Banks, Emmanuel Forbes, I mean, those guys are borderline for me in terms of their ability to impact the game and whether or not you can pass them up. And look, I haven't mentioned this guy much at all. Brian Branch, he's super talented. Every time you watch Alabama film, he shows up. He's just an elite football player. He's really good at everything he does. I have no doubt that he would be versatile enough to play the nickel. He could probably even play corner. I mean, I don't know that for sure. He just looks like a guy who knows how to play the game. The trade back offer or offers that the Ravens get will have to be weighed against those talent evaluations. Porter, Flowers, Banks, Emmanuel Forbes, Branch, Quentin Johnston. Is he a guy you can't pass on at 22? And if you can get back 2 picks in the top 50 and for one of those guys, and you can draft a comparable player at 27 or 29 or 30 or 34, it's definitely a possibility that the Ravens do so, even though it would make things boring. Scenario number 1, where the Ravens do not select anyone in round 1, would probably piss most of us off, myself included. The final scenario, after the stick and pick, that is possibility number 2. The final scenario is one that, at minimum, we as fans have to be aware of, and it's a very low percent chance, if you ask me, and it's one that I'm not an advocate for, be it the Texans or the Colts or whoever, deciding not to take a quarterback. And look, I think it's crazy that there are some teams that are suddenly out on C.J. Stroud. I really actually don't believe that. But if the Texans take C.J. Stroud and the Colts don't want Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, they could try to initiate a trade with the Ravens. And that was actually covered in a ESPN article, I believe, last week. It was by a guy named Bill Barnwell. And that's going to be my lead-in for scenario number 3. It was a highly unbalanced trade, if you ask me. It involved the Ravens not just trading Lamar Jackson, but also trading pick 22 and only getting, as you see at the top of the screen there, a very small, return. The positives, I guess, are you get a very young quarterback at pick 2, whoever the Ravens want, Anthony Richardson, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, and you get to free up cap space to improve the roster some more, presumably. I guess that's the positives. This is the scenario or possibility that I prefer the least. In fact, I hate it. It would presumably involve Lamar signing a deal that the Texans or the Colts have agreed upon already, and the Ravens working out that trade with one of those organizations. Do I think that this is a high percent possibility for Thursday? No, I don't. But you have teams out there who may not get the quarterback they want. The Texans at 2, the Colts at 4, among other teams. Maybe the Raiders at 7 are looking for one. I don't think so. I think they're going to roll with Jimmy Garoppolo. It's possible that someone goes out here and offers a trade package to the Ravens that allows the Ravens to pick a quarterback to use a rookie salary structure. I just think the compensation, and look, full disclosure, this article by, I think it's Bill Barnwell, was somewhat facetious. A really cool article. I'll try to link it up. I suggest you go and read it. At the least, it's entertaining. Basically, his premise was, let me do one trade for all 31 picks in the first round. And so in some level, I think he was forcing it. I think this might be an example of it. It basically involves, trading Lamar Jackson for whoever will be able to, he'll sign a contract with, and then getting some compensation in return. In this case, obviously the compensation isn't high enough. At least it's not for me. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section. Look, when you add in the element of the Jalen Hurts contract, it is surprising to me that there's been apparently no movement. But credit to the Ravens and Lamar Jackson that maybe they are making movement, that maybe there has been a shift towards each other in terms of the salary structure, the contract. I think that article that I just kind of showed you a little bit was an exercise that Barnwell does every year apparently. So it was not designed to be incredibly realistic. And certainly, like I said, the compensation in return, was imbalanced, if you ask me. Even in that theoretical exercise, I think it just doesn't work. Because I don't care what the charts, the Stewart or Johnson charts say. If the Texans or the Colts want Lamar Jackson, they're going to have to improve on that offer that I just showed you. And the Ravens, I don't think, are moving from 22. Barnwell's article is a fantastic read. Like I said, I highly recommend it, at least as an exercise into the possibility of each team trading on Thursday night. And one of the things of the article that I think he explained early on is these are independent trades of each other. So it's not like the Texans make a trade at 2 and then the Cardinals turn around and make a trade at 3. It's independent exercises or decisions by front offices. I would hope that the Ravens and Lamar have now moved closer together since the Jalen Hurts signing. If there's been no reevaluation of what the market clearly shows at this point, then scenario number 3 at least seems like something that the Ravens and other teams have probably discussed by now. Do I think that it's more than a 5% chance of happening? No, I don't. You may think differently. You may think it's a higher percent chance. I think the Jalen Hurts signing, along with the Ravens acquiring Odell Beckham Jr., and the Hurts contract bearing a really high resemblance to what so many have reported the Ravens offered Lamar last year before the season started. It seems like a perfect opportunity. I said this in another video. It seems like a perfect opportunity for the Ravens and Lamar to move closer together, to have a better opportunity to get something done, so we avoid this situation that I'm describing in scenario number 3, which is Lamar being traded on a night when maybe the Ravens don't have as much leverage in the trade scenarios because a team wants to move on from pick 2 or pick 4 or pick 6 or whatever. I think it's a somewhat facetious trade that Barnwell proposed. I think it is something the Ravens have probably explored at the least. You guys let me know which possibility of the 3 that I presented that you think is the most likely on Thursday night. I'm not asking which scenario or outcome you think or you prefer or you would advocate for if you had a seat in the Ravens front office room. That's not what we're doing. I mean, I could tell you which one I would advocate for. I would advocate for trading back if we could trade back to 29 and pick up, another pick in the top 50 or 60. I would be fine with that. I do not want to move back to the Jets at 42 or 43 from 22. That seems like a long way. It's even a stretch for me to think about moving back from 22 to 34, which I believe is where the Arizona Cardinals select 34. I would not want to move back any more than 7, 8, 9 picks at the most. You guys may have a different opinion, but I'm not really looking for which scenario we prefer, because I prefer the trade back scenario that allows us to still get 2 really good football players. But I'm asking you which one of these seems more realistic as it stands right now, Monday night, about 70, 71 hours before the Ravens may give us some type of answer. I think that the Ravens have done a good job, and Lamar for the most part too. I know there's been some social media posts that people would say is Lamar leaking contract negotiation information. I don't necessarily co-sign that. I think generally those two sides have done a pretty good job of not commenting publicly. Maybe there's back channel releases of information that you think are from the Ravens or from Lamar. For me, scenario 1, the scenario where the Ravens trade back maybe with the Saints to acquire another second rounder or a third rounder to improve the roster organically, seems like the best option. Option 3, possibility number 3, not only do I think it would be the one that doesn't help the Ravens, or helps the Ravens the least, let me rephrase that, it's the one that personally I would not want to see, because I'm looking forward to doing another 50 videos or 30 on Lamar Jackson in 2023. You guys let me know what you think is the most realistic possibility as we head into the draft. Feel free to comment on which one you prefer. I think if you're a Ravens fan, you've listened this long, I know which one you prefer. You prefer the either scenario 1 or 2 that improves the Ravens the most and keeps Lamar Jackson in the fold. Hopefully, at some point, those two sides can move closer together. It appears as if the Jalen Hurts contract did not do so, and you would think under normal business circumstances that it would, because it resembles the contract that so many people have reported Lamar was offered in August or September. It really resembles it, if you ask me, to a 95% degree. Appreciate you guys checking out the video. If it's possible for things to have not reached the boiling point, they certainly could on Thursday night. If and when the Texans or Colts do not take a quarterback at 2 or 4, or even 12 for that matter in the Texans' case, and then now the Ravens fans have to sit there and wait from pick 12 or 13 until 22 to see what we do, whether we trade back, whether we stick and pick, or whether, God forbid, there's some trade in the works for Lamar Jackson to give the Ravens future draft capital. Appreciate you guys' time. If you think other people would, enjoy this video, my commentary and prediction of the 3 most likely scenarios Thursday night, please consider sharing the link out on social media to help this video get more reach.